Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us on today's webinar. It's a double session looking at our civil engineering and construction and the built environment programmes. Today's hosts are Dr. Graeme Bowles and Dr. Laurent Galbrun. Before we kick off, I will just quickly cover off some housekeeping. The session is being recorded. All the lines are muted automatically. However, you can still use the Q&A facility on the right-hand side of your screen. What we'll do is we'll collate these during the course of the presentation, and at the end we'll have a Q&A session between myself and the presenters. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Graeme, who's going to pick up the first part of the presentation. Graeme, over to yourself.
Okay, thanks, David. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Graeme Bowles, and I'm the programme lead for the BSc Honours in the Built Environment Graduate Apprenticeship. What I hope to do is, over the next 10 to 15 minutes, just explain some of the principles of the programme, some of the content, how it actually operates, and some of the benefits that flow to the apprentice and to the employer. I'll speak about some of the general principles of how the apprenticeship operates, and that applies to the civil engineering programme as well. So when I finish, my colleague Laurent Galbrun will talk around the civil engineering programme. A lot of the features and the characteristics are common to both, and that's why it makes sense to pick up these two together in a single webinar. So firstly, normally we would like to welcome you onto campus and to show you around and to meet you in person. That's obviously not possible, but I hope this gives you all the information that you need to consider the apprenticeship programmes and give you the opportunity to ask any questions and get these questions answered. I'm an academic with the School of Aegis, but I'm also a chartered surveyor and an APC assessor, which does give me an understanding and an insight into industry and its needs. Just a little bit of background in terms of what's been happening recently that's led up to the construction and built environment apprenticeship. These are relatively new programmes across the university and across the sector. But as far as construction and the built environment is concerned, the university has got a strong heritage, has long been delivering degree programmes in construction-related education, both at undergraduate level, postgraduate level. We were the first university to offer a degree programme in building in the UK, and I'm pleased and proud to say that the National League tables also recognise the quality of what we do, what we deliver, and the quality of the graduates that we actually produce. So although the construction and the built environment graduate apprenticeship is relatively new, this is the third year that it's been operating, we've actually been doing this stuff for a long time as far as degree level construction management, quantity surveying and built environment programmes are concerned. I'm also pleased to say that we've got really strong links with industry and the professions, and the construction and built environment apprenticeship is fully accredited by the RICS. In terms of the content and the title, the direction, construction and the built environment is a relatively broad label, but the curriculum is actually developed from our long-established and very successful quantity surveying programme. So much of the content of the degree programme has a QS flavour and has the type of subjects you would expect to find in this kind of area. That's not to say that all our apprentices are trainee surveyors or trainee QSs. We do have a number of apprentices who work for contractors, who are site-based, but it's also relevant to their needs and their employers' needs. A little bit about where we've come from recently, which positions us well to deliver these and support these apprenticeships. The university has traditionally followed the full-time honours degree programmes that you would expect in a university, but for a number of years we have actually been moving towards a positioning, an approach which more closely integrates with industry. We set up a culture of external mentoring scheme which facilitates placements for full-time students into industry. We have introduced a part-time study option for the final year. So this graduate apprenticeship represents a sort of natural direction of travel in terms of our closer ties, closer links with industry, and formalising work-based learning. And we'll talk a little bit more about what the work-based learning aspect actually means. So the apprentice route provides an alternative to the traditional degree experience. It's got equivalence to the full-time campus-based honours degree programme, and an apprentice in full-time employment can achieve an honours degree in exactly the same timescale as a campus-based student. Okay, so that's a little bit about the background and how it's developed. The aim of this programme, as well as a civil engineering apprenticeship, is to provide a work-based learning programme that will develop the management, the business and the technical skills of employees that are useful and valued by the employer. So a key phrase here is work-based learning. That's what differentiates an apprenticeship from a pure part-time course or a full-time campus-based course. So much of what the apprentice does in the workplace will directly support their learning and will directly contribute to their credit-bearing contribution towards their degree. And what we expect is that most of the apprentices will continue their professional development towards chartered surveyor status, and that can either be down the QS pathway or the project management pathway. So we have a range of apprentices, a range of employers, from small consultancies, large consultancies, multidisciplinary practices, contractors of different sizes as well. So it does actually encapsulate the needs of a wide range of industry sectors. And the key themes that we cover, the key themes that we develop the education and the work-based skills of the apprentices in, cover technology, sustainability, cost management, business management, the contracts and procurement. All the things that you would expect to see in a degree programme of this nature. So just to say a little bit about the structure of this programme, and actually this follows the civil engineering programme as well. We have a 4-year honours degree structure. The layout of each year is pretty consistent in terms of semester 1, semester 2, which is the traditional university calendar. That's where we deliver a number of the traditional courses that apprentices will attend with the campus-based students, covering a number of subjects. So in year 1 you can see topics like introductory economics, introduction to design, enterprise and the business environment, global challenges. So these subjects that you see in bold are those which are taught in the more traditional lecture, theatre, tutorial, academic format of any university course. But below these subjects, you'll see we've got a range of work-based learning courses. These are the ones which are actually developed in partnership with the employer. They are portfolio based, and they are assessed as a portfolio. So the work-based learning courses are flexible. They are based on certain learning outcomes across these subjects, but we will work with employers and we will work with apprentices to ensure that the experience actually supports the requirements of these courses. You'll see, as well as semester 1, semester 2, there is also a semester 3, which is flagged up as work-based learning support. That's part of the year where the apprentice, working with the university and ourselves, can just make sure that all of their learning which they get through semester 1 and semester 2 is topped up throughout the summer, and gets the apprentices into a position where they can actually catch up on any work that they need to catch up, meet all of the learning outcomes that they might not have got through the traditional academic year, and allow them to progress on to the next year. So I won't talk through the detail of the course content, but this slide is useful just to show you the structure and the subject coverage for each of the years. So year 2, the format is the same as year 1, and if we flip on to year 3 and year 4, yep, looks pretty similar. We've got a range of traditional university courses and work-based learning courses. Okay, so that's the 4 years that make up the degree content, the degree programme. Now, it's 4 years maximum, but we do have apprentices who can join us in year 2 or even year 3, depending on their background, depending on their experience, and whatever qualifications they may already have achieved, whether that's HNC level, HND or something else. So that's something to bear in mind, is that it's 4 years maximum, but conceivably it could be as short as 2 years for an apprentice to achieve their honours degree. Then following that, they are positioned, they are ready to go on to their next stage of their career, which we would expect to be towards chartered status with the RICS. And as I mentioned earlier, the 2 alternative pathways are QS in construction or project management. So the breadth of the framework allows apprentices to develop, allows graduates to develop down those 2 paths, depending on what their own career aspirations are, and also what best fits with the employer's business. So something about the key features of this programme, which is also shared by the civil engineering programme. About 50% of the programme in total is work-based learning. So that is what the tasks, the activities, the job, whatever it is that employees, apprentices are doing in the workplace, that is actively contributing to their portfolio development and contributes to the credit-bearing aspects of the degree programme. It's day release format, so it looks like a traditional part-time day release, with apprentices spending 1 day per week at the university and 4 days with the employer. But the difference between the apprenticeship and the part-time and a traditional part-time course is that what they are doing throughout the week is contributing to their education and to the assessment of the programme, and that's why they can do it at the same speed as a full-time degree programme. So the work-based learning is encapsulated through portfolios, which is all of the evidence that they collect in the workplace, evidence of their learning, critical reflection. We guide the apprentices and employers as to what we'd expect to see in that portfolio, but how they actually get that, the evidence that they accumulate, is from their job role and from the activities that they actually undertake in the workplace. But we'll work with employers, we'll work with the apprentices to monitor that, to review that regularly and assess that at points throughout the academic year. The last point there, I mentioned previously that advanced entry is possible at year 2 and also at year 3 actually for suitably qualified candidates. One of the principles that we have is an individual learning agreement, which is a tripartite agreement between the university, between the apprentice and the employer, and that serves as a sort of informal partnership contract, a charter, just to make sure that we have a common understanding, a common agreement, a common learning agreement that governs the relationship between all 3 parties. And it's intended to guide the apprentice and gives us all something to monitor and to. So the parties to that individual learning agreement are the university personal tutor, who will oversee the development of the apprentice and provide both academic and pastoral support for the on and the off-campus aspects of the apprenticeship. But there's also a work-based mentor who's really important to the development of the apprentice. And that work-based mentor is usually a supervisor. It can be the line manager or someone else within the employing organisation who will work with us to oversee the work-based learning and to guide the apprentice. And the assessment of the campus-based, the non-work-based learning courses is a combination of coursework and traditional examinations. So it's a rounded, it's a blended assessment regime of work-based learning portfolio, traditional coursework, essays, and some examinations, but not too many. Okay, so that sums up some of the aspects around the principles of the apprenticeship, what we're trying to achieve, what we think some of the benefits are. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Laurent Galbrun now, but I would like to engage in the discussion following this and attempt to answer some of the questions that you might have around the detail or the more general aspects of the apprenticeship. So thanks for listening, and I look forward to discussing this a little bit later.
Okay, good afternoon. This is Laurent Galbrun. I'm the program director for the BA in Civil Engineering. And I'm going to discuss in the next roughly 15 minutes the entry requirements related to the program, give you some information about the program, describe the structure and what is its content. I'll actually reinforce some of the things that have already been said by Graeme in terms of work-based learning in practice. So what do we mean by that? I'll show you some examples. And finally, I'll finish by discussing accreditation and specifically the routes to incorporated engineer and chartered engineer. Now, to start with, similar to what Graeme was saying for the building degrees, the civil engineering degree of Heriot-Watt University is recognized as a high quality degree, and this is consistently shown by league tables. So we see here on this slide, for example, for the Guardian University Guide of 2020, civil engineering is ranked among the top 10 in the UK. And if you go a few years back, it's actually across the world within the 150 top institutions for civil and structural engineering. Now, what are the entry requirements for coming into the course? So those are quite specific. It's based on the qualifications, but also on the experience of potential apprentices. And listed on this slide are entry requirements for year 1 as well as advanced entry, so year 2 in particular, exceptionally year 3. Now, you will get a copy of this, so I don't intend to really discuss the details. But what's important to point out, so if you have hires for Scotland or A-levels for England, we would be looking at the grades that the candidate has achieved. But we will not only look at qualifications, we'll also look at the experience, so the work experience. It's fairly common for companies to put forward as a potential apprentice somebody who has been already working with them for quite a while, sometimes for several years. And when they send us an application, we would want to look at what is their experience, work experience, what they've been working on, what type of projects, and this can affect the way in which we decide, for example, how suitable they are, even if they don't necessarily meet the qualifications, the school qualifications. Another thing to point out, HNCs, HNDs, it's fairly common for us to have apprentices that join that have done an HNC in particular, and somebody with an HNC that has an A, in the graded unit of the HNC would be allowed to start from year 2. Other things that are considered for advanced entry are advanced hires, as shown in the slide, as well as A-levels with ABB and including the math. But what's important to understand is that this is an academic judgment. So don't look only about the grades that you see here on the screen. We look at the actual experience, work experience, prior learning from the candidates, and we make an overall judgment to decide whether they can come onto the course and at which entry point, year 1, year 2, exceptionally year 3. I'm just going to say a little bit more about year 3. We have had a couple of cases that have been quite exceptional because it was actually students that used to be at Heriot-Watt University. They had done the first 2 years, and effectively they stopped after 2 years. They went into a company to work, but obviously they had done those 2 years, so we could allow them to come from year 3. This is quite an exceptional case. Program information. So how has the program been designed? So we want to produce high quality graduates with the understanding, knowledge, skills, and personal qualities required to take up a wide range of roles across the construction industry. Now, what's really important in this sentence is the wide range of roles. So if you get a junior technician in your company, they might be doing something quite repetitive in their day-to-day work. That's not what we expect from an apprentice. It's the actual opposite. You take somebody as an apprentice because you want them to be rounded individuals by the end they finish the degree. You want them to be exposed to a wide range of topics and different areas. So ideally, those are people that will be moved across different departments within the company, that will work with a wide range of colleagues, and that will develop an understanding of all those different areas. That's really the benefit of doing the apprenticeship. The technical subjects that are covered in the degree are what you would expect to find in a civil engineering degree, which is structures, geotechnics, materials, hydraulics and hydrology, as well as mathematics. Embedded into that, there are environmental aspects considered in most of the courses, sustainability, and you will see in the structure, we also offer a number of management courses that are actually taken from the GA of Construction and Built Environment that Graeme was discussing. This is deliberate. It's to give actually some experience in management to those engineers, which we think is very valuable. In the degree, they will do some problem solving. They'll look at design, some analysis. There will be teamwork. There will be labs. There will be reports that they have to write, so they'll develop their writing skills, and obviously they'll develop also their professional skills throughout the work they do in the company. It's very much a mix of theory and practice. So they learn theory at university, but they apply the knowledge through the work they do at the company. As Graeme has said, the work-based learning is largely based on submission of portfolios, but in terms of the courses they do on campus, it's going to be very much a mix of coursework and in some cases exams, so there will be also some exams. Here is the structure for civil engineering. So similar to what Graeme has showed, there is semester 1, semester 2, semester 3. What we see on top for year 1, so we have 2 courses offered on campus in semester 1, 2 courses offered on campus in semester 2. So the semester 1 specific and semester 2 specific courses are taught on campus. So effectively the apprentice comes to lectures, does tutorials, labs, exactly like on-campus students do. Okay, so they do the same as what an on-campus student does. But the 4 courses below that, the one that spans throughout the year, so semester 1, semester 2, and 3, those are the work-based learning courses. So those are the ones that they achieve through the submission of a portfolio and by actually using their work knowledge and experience. Effectively, we provide a list of learning outcomes for each one of those courses, and I'll show you an example in a moment of what we call the course specification documents. So we provide some documents to the apprentices, to the work-based mentors, and they can see what we expect them to achieve for each of those learning work-based learning courses. And effectively, they need to demonstrate that they can meet those learning outcomes in the workplace. Semester 3, just to say a little bit more based on top of what Graeme has said, we do finish the teaching, the formal teaching, after semester 2. So effectively, there is no teaching after semester 2, which ends typically beginning of April, and that's when you would still be working on your work-based learning courses and would have to submit those typically towards the end of June. One more thing to say, this is still to be formally approved, but due to the special circumstances we're in, the COVID-19 circumstances, we normally have a September start, and we will have a September start this year for the new entry apprentices, but we're also looking to offer a January start. It's very likely that this will go ahead because it's being pushed forward by our head of school as well as the business director of the graduate apprenticeships. What that would mean is that if you look, for example, at year 1, you would start effectively in semester 2. So you would do those courses, and you would do the semester 1 courses later on, starting in September of that year. But you will still do throughout the year, so from January to December, effectively you'll be working on those work-based learning courses. So we are offering this flexibility because we know we are at a time where companies are prioritizing a number of things based on the current situation and might not have the apprenticeship on the top of their list, so we can give them a bit more time to decide those things, to sign up contracts, and then to be able to start in January. Going into more details about the structure, so looking at year 1, it's fairly general, the topics with which we start. So you have a lot of introduction in the title, something general like civil engineering applications. From year 2, it becomes a bit more specific. For example, you have structural mechanics, where you do a bit of mechanics of statical mechanics, determinate structures, you do hydraulics and hydrology, you do some design studies where you look at a number of, again, some calculations, so you get a bit more mathematical, advanced type of work in those courses. You also have some management courses, so in year 1, cost control principles or e-construction will be management type of courses. In year 2, you would have cost modeling and measurement. Construction technology as well is also taken by the construction built environment, and you will see we have construction technology 1 in year 1 and 2 in year 2. So that gives a fairly broad knowledge about the technology on how to build buildings. Moving on to year 3, it gets more and more specific. So with structural analysis, that looks also at indeterminate structures, design of concrete elements, steel elements, more hydrology, geology and soil properties, and so on. Again, all this will be available to you. I'm not going to go into details of that. Just pointing out for year 4, there is a dissertation that is a double course, so it spans across two semesters effectively. And the dissertation will be quite interesting for companies because it will give you an opportunity to do some research. You might have always thought, oh, we would like to spend a bit of time looking at that specific thing, and the apprentice can decide to use that as their dissertation project. So some examples, I was talking about the learning outcomes for a work-based learning course. So these are two course specification documents. So the one on the left is for Introduction to Engineering Design, the one on the right is for Structural Mechanics. So these are documents we give to apprentices and work-based mentor at the beginning of the year. And what you see in blue are the learning outcomes that are listed. So this is what we expect apprentices to be able to achieve in that course. What's really important here, we talk about demonstrating an understanding. So for example, if I look at this one, civil engineering design, structural models, engineering systems at the main headings, they need to demonstrate an understanding of those topics. That's different from demonstrating activity. So let's say you have worked in those areas and you produce a report where you have a lot of, for example, drawings, some spreadsheets, some outputs of software, some reports from the company. This demonstrates activity. That does not demonstrate understanding. Now, from an academic point of view, we need more than that. We need the apprentice to be able to show they understand the topics, so they can discuss the topics, they can then relate what they do at work to those topics, so they can actually do a bit of critical analysis. So if they give an example of a design, let's say, they can say, why did I think this way? Why this design? What were the other alternatives? What are the advantages and disadvantages of those different options? This is how they demonstrate understanding and knowledge. So those things are given at the beginning of the academic year, and we have a meeting at the very beginning with the apprentice, with each apprentice and the work-based mentor, and we go through each course specification document to make sure that they can achieve all those learning outcomes in the workplace. Now, in some cases, there might be gaps. So you might say, well, actually, we don't do some of those things in the company. That's fine. Okay, we will look at how you can achieve those things alternatively. It could be that you need to do a bit more self-study. Now, incidentally, you will have access, apprentices will have access to the learning material online like on-campus students have, because those courses also exist in an on-campus format. So they will have access to all the lecture notes, so they can do a bit of reading, and they can actually develop their understanding of a topic they might not do at work. They can do their own searches, find examples, and be able still to show how they understand the topic and how that relates to some practical applications. Now, the extreme is you do not do any of the learning outcomes in a course, in which case we might offer some coursework. So the academic, the course leader might say, okay, here is a coursework, a piece of coursework that you can do instead of submitting a work-based learning report. And we have done some of those things for some courses that tend to be more theoretical. Now, I have to say that till the current year, we've had actually only one course delivered on campus in semester 1 and one course in semester 2. We have changed the structure following feedback from apprentices to 2 courses in semester 1, 2 courses in semester 2, to actually have all the theoretical courses that are taught on campus, because apprentices were struggling to do some of the topics in the workplace. So effectively, courses that need a bit more hand calculations, for example, and some background theory, all of those are now offered on campus. A little bit more about work-based learning. So we've said it's 1 day per week at Heriot-Watt University and 4 days with the employer. It's very important to understand that this is not a part-time degree. It's not that they come 1 day a week at university and they will do everything for the degree in that day. No, that's not how it works. What they do at work is being used for the degree. So they collect information, evidence, the work they actually do contributes to their understanding of the topics they're achieving throughout the degree. Additionally, we have put in the contracts that of the 4 days with the employer, half a day should be specifically dedicated to university work, which means if you need to do a bit of reading, if you need to do a bit of writing for your reports, you should be given time to do that, roughly 4 hours every week. We are completely flexible on how this is managed. It's up to the company to decide that. You could have half a day every week, you would have a day over 2 weeks, you could have an hour here and there. It really doesn't matter for us as long as you have some time allocated that is equivalent to half a day over those 4 days in which you are at the company. Also very important are the regular meetings that we have. So on top of being program director, I'm also the personal tutor for most apprentices. And we would have meetings typically 4 times per year with each apprentice and their work-based mentor. The first meeting is particularly important because we discuss all the courses for that year, in particular all the work-based learning courses, making sure that everything is in place in the company so they can do those courses. If not, what are the gaps? What can we do instead? Another example I can mention is there might be labs required. We have offered some lab sessions for specific courses on campus on the day they come to university. So there are things you might not be able to do in the company that we can still offer you to do at university. In the first meeting, we'll also discuss what Graeme has already mentioned, the individual learning agreement, which is again very much developed as a partnership between the employer as well as the university. This agreement is mainly looking at the long-term development of the apprentice. So making sure we have an understanding of where the apprentice wants to be in the long term and what needs to be done to achieve that. And my final slide, accreditation. So the program is already accredited by the Joint Board of Moderators. And basically you get the educational base that you need for achieving incorporated engineer status. Now, on top of that, that's the educational base. Obviously, you need the work experience as well. Now, you might want to go for chartered engineer status. You can do that by doing an extra year, doing a master. Okay, so you can do a university master, and that would give you the educational base for chartered engineer status. And that is all from me. Thank you very much. I think we will move on now to questions.
Yeah, thank you, Laurent and Graeme, for that great insight into both of the programs and also some of the underlying principles behind graduate apprenticeship programs. So that was great. Thank you very much. So you will be delighted to hear that we have a number of questions in already. So we'll start to go through these, and for any of the attendees, please keep sending them through, and we'll do our best to answer these. Okay. So Graeme, so a lot of these, Graeme and Laurent, they could probably cut across both programs are kind of general about the sort of courses on graduate apprenticeship. So what I'll do is I'll start off with some of the kind of higher level ones, and then we'll go into some of the more specific ones. I think there's one here around about in terms of feedback from current students and employers. How do you find that they find the balance of on-campus and work-based learning? Is it manageable, and are employers able to provide the learning required to meet the university's expectations?
So can I jump in for that one?
Sure.
So at the end of the academic year, each apprentice has to submit a report that goes to Skills Development Scotland, who is funding the apprenticeship. So we've got an insight into what the apprentice as well as the employer, because they have to write in that report as well, what they think about how things have been going. And I would say it's really positive what we've had so far. So I think there is a recognition that these things are good and work well. However, I have to say this is not an easy route. Not to be very clear, if you employ somebody to do a graduate apprenticeship, they need to be quite motivated, because obviously working as well as studying at the same time is challenging. So that is not the easy route. I think it has many advantages because you do earn money, you do get work experience, and you do get a degree in the same time as an on-campus student. So many advantages, but you need to be very careful when you choose the person that you want to take on to do the apprenticeship, to make sure that they are motivated and they know what they are going into, because obviously they'll have to work quite a lot, and often, evenings, weekends are fairly common. Not to say that on-campus students as well need to do that kind of thing, but it's particularly challenging for the apprentices to do all that in those 4 years. So it's just something to bear in mind. It's not an easy route, but it's a very rewarding one, and it's one where you actually get a lot out of it.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Laurent. One that kind of follows on from that, really, just talking about that kind of workload, etc. So the question next is, what support does the university provide to employers to ensure that they provide useful and relevant work-based learning activities for the apprentice? And I know we covered some of this in the slides, but we could pick up on it again. And is there a process in place to ensure that the work-based learning are agreed between the student and the uni and the employer? to make sure that they meet the requirements.
So if I can, sorry, and Graeme, if you want to say more after.
Yeah.
What is key is that first meeting we have at the beginning of the academic year, where we discuss those things with the work-based mentor and with the apprentice. And that's where we make sure that we are aligned and we know that everything can be achieved. So the work-based mentor has a big responsibility, okay, because in the end, there will be the ones allocating the work to the apprentice. They will be the ones that will know whether they can have the apprentice going into different departments, talking to different colleagues. So we cannot do that. Okay, we don't work in those companies. So that's the responsibility of the work-based mentor. So it's very important to understand it's a partnership. It works two ways. We say what we expect, and the course specification documents are quite specific in that sense. But we have a discussion. We're always available to discuss, by phone, by email, on top of those meetings. So really, from experience, I would say that first meeting tends to clarify most of the queries and questions that mentors have and they're unsure about. And typically we know, what needs to be done. If, for example, there are gaps, what we can offer to actually cover those gaps.
Okay, great.
So David, if I could just add to what Laurent was saying there. For all of these apprenticeships, it's, key relationships are between the university, the work-based mentor, the personal tutor, and the apprentice. And I think that's a regular and ongoing communication is really important to that, to make sure that the environment is correct, to make sure that apprentices, as far as possible, are getting experiences that are well aligned to the framework. Now, we know that the needs of the business comes first, and that, in terms of meeting the outcomes at certain points of the time, we have to be, and we can be, quite flexible around that. But by the end of the year, the apprentice will have got through all of the learning outcomes for that particular year, not necessarily at the same time, depending on the nature of the organisation and the projects that they're engaged in. But we will work with the employer, with the apprentice and the mentor to ensure that, collectively we're heading in the same direction.
Can I add a couple of things, that I think are quite important, maybe I could have mentioned in the presentation. First of all, you've seen that each of the work-based learning courses spans throughout the year, and it's deliberate to give that flexibility that you can decide which one to start when. Okay, so we're not prescriptive in terms of do this in semester 1, do this in semester 2, and so on. Because as Graeme was saying, you might be working on a project right now and on something different at another time that is relevant for another course. So there is that flexibility. And the other thing I wanted to say, I just forgot. I think that was an important point I wanted to make. I think you will come back. You can just carry on.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Laurent, if it springs to mind. Slightly different tack on this one. And this is, again, I think this is more specific to these two courses. So, like, some apprentices will be in a fortunate position of being employed by a multidisciplinary consultancy, and they'll have the sort of opportunities to rotate between the teams. So that will give them more of an opportunity, I guess, to meet the overall learning requirements of the programme. But what happens? What's the situation with apprentices who maybe work in maybe smaller companies or maybe not such a multidisciplinary environment? What happens with those kind of guys in terms of making, again, sure that they meet the required learning outcomes?
Shall I say something about that? My experience is that big is not necessarily better. Apprentices and employers come in all shapes and sizes. And I think what is really key to the success and the development is that relationship between mentor, apprentice and the university. Now, if you work for a multidisciplinary international organisation, you will be engaged probably in different types of projects than if you work for a much smaller regional contractor. but you're all engaged in projects, you're all going through a design and construction process, and that gives us the vehicle for that learning. Now, in situations where there's not direct work-based experience, that might be because an apprentice is right at the start of their career, they may be very junior and just in the organisation. We address that by an apprentice evaluating a situation, for example, so that they can then at least appreciate a principle about some management aspect, for instance, or a design aspect, by thinking about it, by evaluating what perhaps someone else has done within the organisation, but it still allows them to demonstrate learning and understanding. And we'll work with the apprentice and the mentor to just sort of tease out where that might happen if they're not actually getting experience through the sort of day-to-day job activity that they have. So for all apprentices, this will require a bit of management, a bit of planning, a bit of foresight, but we've not come across a situation yet where they can't get access to the learning just because of the nature of the employer or the projects that they're attached to.
Okay.
So I hope that kind of reassures people that they can achieve that. I think Laurent was going to come in here.
Yes, can I just add a couple of things, again, just to clarify when we talk about the work-based learning. We are not talking about the apprentice working on projects covering all those different courses. Okay, it's about the knowledge that you have in the company. So they can use past projects, they can work with colleagues that can explain to them how things have been done. Ultimately, anything that is there that they can use to demonstrate their understanding of a topic. So it would be totally unrealistic to think an apprentice at a very junior level would cover all those things. They will need the help from colleagues, from the knowledge available within the company. In the case of smaller companies now, you might not cover all the different areas. What has happened for some of our apprentices that they've worked with some contractors with whom they actually work. There has been a willingness to actually help and to actually get their understanding through, even if it's not from within the company for whom you work, there is somebody there happy to spend maybe a day, half a day explaining you things. Another example is a construction company. Often they tell us, we don't do the design. Yes, but surely you do understand the design because you have to understand the design ultimately. So, there are ways always that you can still demonstrate your understanding of things, even if you're not necessarily doing them yourself. You can often study those things you might need to complement basically the knowledge by doing some self-study. And as I said, you have access to all the course notes for all those different topics. And just one more thing, I do remember what I wanted to say before about, yes, how we make sure that the learning outcomes are achieved. We also have a number of review meetings. So on top of that first meeting that I keep saying is very important, we have review meetings throughout the year. So we always are in touch and we formally make sure that the apprentice is progressing properly, that there is a plan in place, and that the work-based mentor is properly following the apprentice and everything is basically going in the right direction.
Okay, great. Thanks, Laurent. Thanks, Graeme. Just a few more actually. So there's, I know, Graeme, you may have kind of responded to this on the Q&A, but just for the wider audience, it's a question about courses still going ahead in September.
Yes, the university schedule will run as published, will run as expected, with classes underway and Welcome Week getting underway in September. But the format of delivery is still being developed. We will have a form of what's termed responsive blended learning, which will be a mixture of online interaction, face-to-face interaction, but the nature of that is still being worked on across the university to make sure that we comply with whatever guidelines are in place come September.
Cool.
The expectation is largely going to be online lectures, and maybe for smaller groups you could have some labs or tutorials, but of course it's too early yet to say, the details of those things.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. There's also a related question in there around about potential for January starts. I don't know if that's something we want to cover.
Yeah. Yes. So, well, basically, as we said, there would be the opportunity to start in January instead of September. Things, running late at the moment and everything being in lockdown, although some things are reopening in the construction sector. So as I said in my presentation, the only difference for somebody starting in January would be that they would start with the semester 2 courses. And then they would have the semester 1 courses in September of that year. They would still be doing the same courses overall. They would still be doing their 4 work-based learning course for that year over the 12 months of that academic year. So in that sense, it's just a different entry point.
Yeah. So, yeah, just on that, in terms of a deadline, when would we know what the deadline would be for a January start? I suppose that was the specific nature of that question.
That deadline for applications?
I'm not sure. Presumably, I think the question is quite general in terms of when is the deadline for January start. So,
I mean, I can say this is something more for the business side of things.
Sure. Okay.
On the academic side of things, I'm not sure we can answer. So probably if an email is just sent to the GA, so ga@hw.ac.uk, probably this is something that somebody can answer that.
Yeah.
I would expect. I shouldn't say too much without really knowing the details, but I think that there's still quite a bit of time.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a good general point. For any sort of follow-up questions on the Q&A today, please, everybody should just feel free to email into the mailbox ga@hw.ac.uk. So there's a couple more. I know Graeme's going to answer some of these online. Whilst we're doing that, we'll just go through, just pick off the remaining few. If MD's got any other remaining questions, please feel free to send them just now. There's one there that Graeme is looking at online in terms of is a 1-year master's available for apprentices following their graduate apprenticeship degree? So I think that's quite a good question.
Yeah, we've got a range of 1 year's master's programmes across the school, including civil engineering, construction project management, commercial management and quantity surveying. And the entry requirement for a master's programme, again, that's consistent across the school, I think, and that's to have a good honours degree education. So if you have an honours degree at typically 2-1 level, then that would be eligibility for a place of study on one of our master's programmes.
Yeah, and I can confirm that it's the same for civil engineering. So we offer a number of masters for civil engineering that can be taken if one wants to achieve chartered engineering status. Most of those masters can be done part-time. It's not the format of an apprenticeship, because currently SDS, Skills Development Scotland, doesn't fund apprenticeship at master level, although it keeps being discussed, but it's not there yet.
Great. Okay, thanks both. Listen, I think that is all the questions we have in just now. Oh, as he says that, one more comes in a second. Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, this was in response to an earlier question, and I could reply. So it's a kind of follow-up to, obviously, what we have is the 4 days work-based learning and 1 day on campus. And during the presentation, there was some chat about kind of additional work required to make sure people can get through the degree programme. So the kind of slightly more clarification from the person that posed the question was, an additional half day per week within the workplace to do sort of uni work on top of the day release may not be sort of financially viable for some organisations. I suppose there's a kind of general point there of how do people kind of work around that at the moment?
If I could say something about my experience working with apprentices, what we found in the last 2 to 3 years is that yes, they spend 1 day per week on campus, but to sort of make good progress, to develop, then where an employer has given some time to consolidate that work, to perhaps develop their reports within the workplace throughout the week, that's been really beneficial. Now, whether that's, I think it's 4 hours is the guidance, regular 4 hours per week throughout the year, or perhaps it's a day here and there. That really depends on the needs of the business and agreement between the employer and the apprentice. It could be a block of time towards the end of the session when we're getting to the run-up to submission. But what we've found is that whatever format it takes, it is really beneficial to actually have that additional time built into the agreement.
Great, thanks, Graeme. So, folks, that's all the questions we have at the moment. So I'd just like to thank Graeme and Laurent for their time this afternoon. Thanks, gentlemen, for the Q&A and also the presentations, and also to thank everybody who's attended today. I hope you enjoyed the session. As we touched on earlier, if you've got any sort of further questions or any feedback at all on today's presentation, or any general queries about the Graduate Apprenticeships programme, please do email us to the mailbox at ga@hw.ac.uk. And with that, I just thank you for the attendance and wish you well, and see you soon in the next event. Thank you.